Hi everyone. My name is Kyle Mitchell, and until recently, I genuinely believed that life was a predictable, steady, but damn pleasant thing. I had a job that didn't just pay the bills but made me wake up in the morning thinking, yes, I want to do this. I had a wife who, even after 5 years of marriage, still took my breath away whenever she walked into a room. And we had a little son, 11-month-old Leo, for whom I wanted to move mountains, swim oceans, and, if necessary, pluck a star from the sky. I worked for a company called Smart Life Solutions. We specialized in turning ordinary houses into something from the future, smart home systems. From programmable thermostats that adjusted themselves to the weather outside, to full-fledged security systems with motion sensors, smart locks, and lighting that could be controlled from your phone, even if you were on the other side of the world. It sounds pretentious, I know. But in reality, it was just a bunch of wires, sensors, microchips, and painstaking, almost delicate work. I started from the very bottom, as a simple installer. I remember crawling through dusty attics in the height of summer when the temperature under the roof hit 40 degrees Celsius. I remember drilling into walls in new buildings while concrete dust covered my face in a thin gray layer. But I liked it. I liked seeing the technology come to life, seeing people's eyes light up when they said, "Turn on the light," and the light actually turned on. Over time, I got into it, earned an engineering degree, night school, mind you, after work, and worked my way up to project manager. I coordinated teams, talked to clients, solved complex technical problems. And I have to say, I was pretty good at it. My boss, Roger Whitmore, was a true role model for me back then, an idol, you could say. Tall, distinguished, gray-haired, with a perfectly trimmed beard that made him look like a professor from a prestigious university, and a voice that gave the impression he knew the answers to all the universe's questions. When Roger walked into a room, he automatically drew attention without any effort. He was around 50, but he looked 40 at most. He always wore impeccably tailored suits that I'm sure were made to order, and he smelled of some expensive, subtle wood with a hint of bergamot. When he said, "Kyle, great job, kid, you're doing better than I expected," I felt like a superhero ready to conquer the world. I hung on his every word, absorbing advice like a sponge. We often had lunch together, and he would tell me about business strategies, the importance of keeping your word, and how to build relationships with clients. I looked at him and thought, there it is, the embodiment of success. This is a man who made it all on his own. 6 months ago, what I then considered the greatest triumph of my career happened. Roger called me into his office, a huge corner office with panoramic windows overlooking the entire city, and announced he was promoting me to regional manager. This wasn't just a title change. It was a quantum leap. A salary increase of almost double, a company car, a brand new Ford Explorer, mind you, and my own private office. Not as luxurious as Roger's, but mine. With a door that now bore a sign reading, Kyle Mitchell, Regional Manager. I was on cloud 9. That evening, Emily and I opened a bottle of champagne that she had specially bought and hidden in the fridge for a special occasion. We sat in the kitchen of our modest apartment, drinking bubbly from ordinary glasses, and I looked at her and thought, God, how lucky I am. Emily, my wife, worked at a small flower shop called Botanica, a 20-minute walk from our house, in a cozy neighborhood with low-rise buildings and old maple trees. The shop was tiny but incredibly soulful. It always smelled of damp earth, freshly cut roses, pine trees before New Year's, and something else I couldn't put into words but associated with peace and comfort. The shop owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Garcia, adored Emily and often left her in charge. Emily was beautiful. And it wasn't about some cookie-cutter, model-type beauty that jumps out at you from glossy magazine covers and is forgotten the second you close the magazine. No, she was beautiful with that warm, cozy, genuine kind of beauty that makes you want to come home. She had chestnut hair with a slight reddish tint, which she often gathered into a casual, slightly messy bun at the nape of her neck, especially when she was fussing with flowers or Leo. And she had green eyes. Not just green, but a deep, emerald shade that seemed to change color depending on the light and her mood. When she looked at me, those eyes sparkled. Leo was born 11 months ago. He was our little son, our continuation. He had just started taking his first uncertain, wobbly steps, holding onto the couch or our hands. His laughter, ringing and bubbly, was the best music I had ever heard. In the mornings, he would wake up before us and start cooing in his crib, demanding attention and food. And honestly, I never got angry at those early wake-ups. Because the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was his smiling face with two tiny lower teeth that had just cut through. That morning was like any other. Emily was already bustling in the kitchen. I could hear the clinking of dishes and the hiss of the coffee maker. Leo sat in his high chair, concentrating on smearing oatmeal across the plastic tray, occasionally trying to shove the spoon into his mouth, but mostly missing. "Are you working late today?" Emily asked, handing me a steaming mug of coffee. She was wearing her work apron with green stains from stems and plant sap, which she forgot to take off even at home. "I hope not," I said, pecking her on the top of her head, inhaling the familiar scent of her coconut shampoo. "Roger invited me to lunch, wants to discuss the development strategy for next quarter. Probably going to bombard me with numbers again, but it's useful." Roger had been inviting me to these lunches a lot lately. We'd go to expensive restaurants that I would never have allowed myself, and we'd talk not just about work. He asked about Emily, about Leo, about our future plans. He gave advice, not pushy, but like an older comrade. He told me about how he and Andrea raised their two sons, how they cope with difficulties. I was touched by such attention. He said I reminded him of himself when he was young, just as ambitious, hardworking, and right. By the way, I remembered, finishing my coffee. He invited us to his birthday party on Saturday. It'll be like a dinner party at his house. Just close friends and family. What do you think? Emily raised an eyebrow in surprise and stopped wiping Leo's face with a damp cloth. At the boss's house? For his birthday? Is that so formal? I don't even know what to wear. And what do you give people like that? They're probably rich. He said it's just a friendly get-together, no fancy gifts, just a bottle of wine. He wants to introduce us to his wife. Says she's been wanting to meet us for a while, he's told her about me. Told her? Emily smiled, her green eyes twinkling mischievously. And what exactly did you tell her about me? That you're the most beautiful woman in the world and you work with flowers, so we'd fit perfectly into any interior, I joked, dodging the kitchen towel she threw at me. On Saturday evening we dressed with particular care, as if preparing for a society photo shoot, even though we were just going to dinner. I put on my best navy blue blazer, the one I'd bought for our wedding, a white shirt, and gray trousers. I fussed with a tie for a long time but ultimately decided against it. I wanted to look elegant but not overly formal. Emily chose her favorite burgundy dress. It was simple in cut, no plunging neckline or fancy details, but it fit her so perfectly that it took my breath away every time. The color of the dress matched her eyes ideally, making them even deeper and more mysterious. She wore her hair down, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Light makeup, minimal jewelry. Just a thin silver chain with a flower-shaped pendant that I had given her on our first date. We left Leo with my mother, who was thrilled to spend the evening with her grandson. I rang the doorbell of Roger's two-story mansion in the upscale neighborhood of Hillsborough. It wasn't just a house, it was an architectural fantasy, a modern structure of glass, concrete, and wood, with huge windows hinting at expensive designer furniture inside. He opened the door himself. Roger was beaming, but his smile was directed not so much at me as at Emily standing behind me. I didn't notice it then, but now, looking back, I realize his gaze lingered on her a fraction of a second longer than politeness required. He gave her a quick but appraising once-over. "Kyle, Emily," he exclaimed, shaking my hand and immediately turning to my wife. "Finally, I get to meet the woman who managed to make this workaholic not only work but also smile. Kyle has told me so much about you, but I must admit, reality exceeds all expectations. Come in, make yourselves at home." He took Emily by the elbow, gently but insistently, and led her into the living room. I followed, feeling a slight pang of jealousy, but quickly dismissed the thought. "Don't be an idiot, Kyle," I told myself. He's just being a hospitable host. The inside of the house was stunning. Minimalism, expensive furniture, perfect order. Floor-to-ceiling panoramic windows overlooking a garden with illuminated trees. Not a single extra item, not a speck of dust. A faint scent of sandalwood and something floral lingered in the air. From the next room, drying her hands on a towel, emerged a woman. This was Andrea Whitmore. Honestly, I had imagined her quite differently. I thought I'd see a typical, rich man's wife, cold, haughty look, dripping in diamonds, perfect manicure, and a slightly contemptuous smirk. But reality was completely different. Andrea was about the same age as Roger, with short, slightly graying hair and very intelligent, attentive gray-blue eyes. They held not just intelligence but a deep, calm wisdom. She was dressed simply but tastefully, in a white long-sleeved blouse, dark trousers, and comfortable but clearly expensive low-heeled shoes. She wore no jewelry except for her wedding band, a wide platinum band. Kyle, Emily, her voice was soft, contralto, but you could feel an inner strength and confidence. Roger has told us so much about you. Especially about you, Kyle. He says you're his right hand and the future of our company. I'm so glad to finally meet you. Andrea, Roger is too kind to me, I said, feeling a bit awkward from such a warm welcome. I'm just doing my job. He's not just doing his job, Roger interjected, approaching the bar. He lives it. Kyle, what whiskey do you prefer? I have an excellent single malt from Scotland. The evening flew by unnoticed, like one happy moment. Andrea turned out to be an incredibly gracious and easygoing hostess. We talked about flowers, she confessed she adored peonies, and Emily immediately perked up and promised to bring her the best from the new batch arriving next week. About children, their sons were studying at Oxford, and Andrea spoke warmly, without snobbery, about their successes, about travel. It turned out they had traveled half the world. Roger was the epitome of gallantry. He poured wine for Emily, attended to her, pulled out her chair. Naive as I was, I didn't think anything of it. It was his house, he was supposed to be a hospitable host. Andrea looked at her husband several times with warmth and affection, and I thought to myself again, what an ideal family they have. I hope Emily and I are like that in 20 years. Close to midnight, as we were getting ready to leave, Andrea approached Emily and unexpectedly hugged her. Thank you for this evening, she said quietly. You are such bright, genuine people. I miss simple female company so much here, in this big house. Please come again, and don't wait for official invitations. Call anytime. Emily was moved to tears. I saw her eyes glisten. We drove home, full of impressions and warm emotions. All the way back, Emily admired Andrea, saying how intelligent, simple, and heartfelt she was. I completely agreed. We had no idea how soon our lives would turn upside down. 2 weeks passed after that memorable evening. I was sitting in my new office with the nameplate on the door, feeling like the king of the world. Projects were coming in one after another, the team was working harmoniously, like clockwork. We launched 3 new projects in the suburbs, and the clients were thrilled. I was walking on air. Roger, as usual, was around, but lately, I'd started noticing he often stepped out for personal reasons during lunchtime. Sometimes he'd be gone for 2 or 3 hours. I didn't think much of it. The big boss has plenty of things to do, meetings with partners, lunches with investors. Not my concern, right? That Tuesday, I finished work early. Leo was with my mom, she picked him up on Tuesdays and Thursdays to give Emily a break after work. And I decided to surprise my wife, meet her after work. Then maybe go out for dinner somewhere, just the 2 of us, like in the good old days before the baby. I bought her favorite caramel latte from the coffee shop she loved and headed leisurely towards Botanica. It was a warm autumn day. The sun was gilding the maple leaves, the air smelled of fallen leaves and something indefinably sad and beautiful at the same time. I walked along, smiling to myself. The little shop greeted me with the familiar jingle of the bell over the door and the childhood familiar smell, a mix of damp earth, roses, chrysanthemums, and eucalyptus. I walked between the shelves filled with potted flowering plants and buckets of cut flowers, and froze at the entrance to the back room, from where voices were coming. They simply adore these roses, trust my experience. I heard a voice that made my blood run cold and my stomach clench into a tight knot. Roger. His voice was too soft, too insinuating, not the way he spoke to me about quarterly reports. I cautiously peered around the corner. Roger was standing there, leaning with one hand against the doorframe, literally looming over Emily, who was standing behind the counter arranging a bouquet of cream roses. His posture was too relaxed, too intimate, possessive, somehow. He didn't stand like that with any employee, including me. You know so much about flowers, Mr. Whitmore, Emily said with a polite but restrained smile. Her smile was professional, routine, not the warm, homey smile I saw every morning. Roger, please, just Roger. He took a step closer, closing the distance between them dangerously. You know, Emily, these flowers for my wife are just an excuse, honestly. I just like being here. It's so bright here, and beautiful. He looked directly at her, and there was nothing fatherly or friendly in that gaze. I felt the blood rush to my face, my fists clenching involuntarily. I coughed, loudly and deliberately. Kyle. Emily looked up, and such obvious relief flashed in her eyes that my heart broke with love for her and hatred for him. What a surprise. I'm just finishing up. Roger turned around. Not a single muscle twitched on his face. Not a hint of embarrassment, not a trace of guilt. Instantly, as if flicking a switch, he assumed his usual businesslike, slightly patronizing expression. Ah, Kyle, decided to check on your wife? Good man, family comes first, he said in a tone that suggested he hadn't just been openly flirting with her. Well, I'll be going, won't interrupt. Emily, thanks so much for the advice. Andrea will be absolutely thrilled with these roses. See you at the office tomorrow, Kyle. He took the already prepared bouquet that Emily hadn't even finished, nodded at me, and walked out without looking back. I watched him go and walked over to my wife. Does he come here often? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and calm, though everything inside was boiling and churning. Emily looked away and began nervously rearranging some jars on the shelf. A couple of times this week. Buys flowers. Says Andrea just adores them and can't live without them. Emily, look at me. Kyle, she came over and took my hand. Her palm was cold and slightly damp. I need to tell you something. I didn't want to bother you at work. You're working so hard, worrying about the new projects. But this has been going on for over a week. I didn't know how to tell you. We sat down on the small worn-out couch in the corner of the back room, surrounded by boxes of ribbons, wrapping paper, and plastic buckets. And she told me everything. How Roger had come in the first time, 3 days after that memorable evening, just to thank her for a wonderful evening. How he'd come later, to consult on a bouquet for his partner's anniversary. How the visits became regular, every other day, then daily. How he'd linger, chat about nothing, pay compliments not to the flowers but to her. Today he said I was too good for this little shop, she whispered, and I saw tears welling up in her eyes. That I could have my own salon if I wanted. Said he knew people who could help with a space and investment. And then he put his hand on my shoulder. Not exactly an arm around me, just placed it there, but it felt. Kyle, it's so unpleasant. I'm scared of him. He's your boss. Inside me, a bomb exploded. Rage, cold and blind, mixed with a profound sense of betrayal, overwhelmed me. This man, whom I trusted like a father, who called me his right hand, and the future of the company, with whom I shared lunches and work plans, turned out to be a lecherous creep with his eye on my wife. My Emily, the mother of my little son. While I was slaving away for him, expanding his business, he was hunting my wife. I quit, I said, abruptly standing up from the couch. Today, right now, I'll go to the office and write my resignation. I cannot and will not work for this scumbag. Kyle, wait, for God's sake, wait. Emily jumped up and grabbed my arm. You spent years building this career. You stayed up nights, studied, worked yourself to the bone. This promotion, you deserved it. You can't just throw it all away because of what? Because my boss is harassing my wife? I interrupted, raising my voice. This isn't just because, Emily. This is the reason, the most valid reason in the world. To hell with my career. To hell with this company. Tomorrow morning, I'll tell him everything to his face, everything I think of him. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Emily only fell asleep towards dawn, exhausted from tears and worry, but I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, running scenarios of the next day's conversation through my head. How I'd walk into his office without knocking. How I'd throw my ID badge in his face. How I'd say everything that had built up inside me. I imagined his confused, frightened face, and it made me feel better. But the closer it got to morning, the lighter it became outside, the more I realized. Just quitting and yelling at him was too easy. It wasn't a solution. It would leave him unpunished. He'd continue going to other shops, after other women, destroying other families. He'd just lose a valuable employee, me, shrug it off, and find another. And Emily would feel guilty. She'd think it was because of her that I lost my job, that she had provoked the conflict. Then it hit me. Andrea, his wife, that woman with the intelligent, sad eyes who had welcomed us so warmly. She had a right to know who she was living under the same roof with. If Roger allowed himself to behave like this while being a married man, she deserved the truth. And not from some random mistress who could be called a liar, not from an anonymous letter. But from someone who wanted to protect his own family and had nothing to lose except his honor. I knew I was taking a huge gamble. I didn't know how Andrea would react. She might not believe me, might throw me out, might tell Roger everything. Then my career would be over, not just ended, but ruined in disgrace. I'd be labeled a liar, a slanderer, an ungrateful subordinate trying to destroy his boss's family. But the image of Emily standing in that back room with his greasy, leering look gave me the resolve. I had to do this. For her, for Leo, for myself. The next day, I arrived at the office earlier than anyone. I wrote a request for 1 day of unpaid leave, handed it to the secretary, and told her I wasn't feeling well. Roger, conveniently, had left early that morning for some strategy session across town. Perfect timing. I got in my car, and my hands were shaking as I turned the key in the ignition. The whole drive to Hillsborough, I trembled. My heart was pounding in my throat. Several times I wanted to turn around and go home, bury my face in a pillow and forget everything. But every time, Emily's face appeared before my eyes. I pulled up to their mansion. The house looked empty and lifeless under the gray morning sky. I rang the bell. Silence. I rang again. And again. My heart sank. What if she wasn't home? What if I'd come for nothing? Then the door opened. Andrea stood there. She was wearing simple jeans, a loose t-shirt, and reading glasses, which she removed when she saw me. She held a tablet with some charts. She looked tired, but upon seeing me, she raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Kyle?" Her voice held genuine surprise. "What a surprise. Roger is at work, if you're here for him. He left for some meeting, downtown, I think." "I know, Andrea," I breathed out, feeling my throat go dry. "I'm not here for him. I'm here for you." She looked at me carefully. Her intelligent gray-blue eyes seemed to see right through me, reading my every thought. For a second, I thought she already knew why I'd come. She stepped aside, letting me in. "Come in, Kyle. Has something happened? You look pale." We walked into that same living room where weeks ago we had chatted so pleasantly, laughed, and drunk wine. Now, with its expensive furniture and perfect order, it felt like a courtroom where my fate would be decided. I sat on the edge of the same couch I'd sat on before. Andrea sat opposite me in an armchair, her hands folded in her lap. Her posture was calm, but tension showed in her eyes. "I'm listening, Kyle. You're very agitated. Tell me." "Andrea," I began, struggling to find words that stuck in my dry throat. "What I'm about to say might not be my business. Maybe you'll hate me and throw me out. But I can't stay silent any longer. I have to say this. It's about my wife, Emily." I told her everything, from the very beginning, about Roger's first visit to the flower shop, just to say thank you. About the subsequent visits that became regular. About how he told Emily she was too good for this place, and offered to open a salon. About the compliments that became more and more explicit. About how yesterday he put his hand on her shoulder and looked at her with that possessive, lecherous gaze. I tried to be as factual as possible, without excessive emotion, though inside everything was boiling and churning. I just laid out the events, as if I were writing a project report. But when I got to the part about the hand on the shoulder, my voice still cracked. When I finished, a heavy, oppressive silence filled the room. The kind of silence where you feel you could cut the air with a knife. I was afraid to look up. I stared at my hands resting on my knees, waiting for the verdict. Andrea was silent. Seconds stretched like hours. I heard her exhale slowly. That silence was worse than any screaming, any accusations. "Andrea, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this," I added, finally raising my eyes. "Believe me, I'm not looking for gain. I don't want to destroy your family. I just wanted you to know the truth. I'm going to resign today. Write my letter and leave. I can't work for a man who treats my family this way. It's a matter of principle." "Don't resign, Kyle," she said calmly, almost too calmly. I froze. Her face showed neither shock, nor anger, nor surprise, none of what I had expected. Instead, there was a weary, deep resignation, mixed with a cold, steely resolve. Her eyes looked past me, into the past. "I knew," Andrea said simply, and those two words made my hair stand on end. "What?" I asked, not believing my ears. "I knew, Kyle. Not about Emily specifically," she quickly corrected herself, rising from the armchair and walking to the panoramic window, where a light autumn rain had begun to fall. But I knew he was cheating. I've known for a long time. Disappearing in the evenings, too many of those stupid business meetings that ended past midnight. He started bringing home flowers. Every single day, can you imagine? Roger, who in 15 years of marriage had given me flowers maybe 5 times, and only on big holidays, suddenly turned into Romeo. At first, I was happy, thought maybe it's a midlife crisis, he wants to be romantic. Then I realized it was suspicious. Too sudden a change, too forced. She paused, gazing at the raindrops streaking the glass. I hired a private detective a couple of months ago. I have a thick folder of photos and reports now. A secretary from his previous office, some woman from the gym, then another. I was just waiting for the right moment. Gathering evidence, like a prosecutor before a trial. I wanted to have an ironclad case when I confronted him. She turned to me, and though her eyes glistened with tears, her voice remained firm. I sat here, in this room, going through those photos. And I thought, why? What did I do wrong? And then I realized, it wasn't about me. It was about him, about his inner emptiness. I sat there, mouth agape, not believing my ears. Andrea, who had seemed so calm and happy, had been carrying this pain all along, gathering proof. And I had come to her with news I thought would shatter her world, but she had been living in ruins for months. But you know, Kyle, what the main difference is, she continued, stepping closer and perching on the arm of the chair opposite me. Those detective photos are just pictures. Cold, lifeless. They prove the fact of infidelity, but they don't capture the essence of it, the meanness. What you did today. You came here not for revenge, not to harm Roger or get a promotion. You came, risking everything, to protect your wife. You risked your career, your future, your well-being, because some things matter more to you. You're a good man, Kyle Mitchell. A real one, and Emily is incredibly lucky to have a husband like you. She stood up, picked up her phone from the side table, and looked at me. Thank you, Kyle. You have no idea what a service you've done me. You've saved me from having to make scenes, humiliate myself, gather evidence piece by piece. Your story was the final straw that tipped the scales for me. Now I know what to do. What are you going to do? I asked, though I already suspected. What I should have done long ago. She dialed a number. Hello, this is Andrea Whitmore. Connect me with Mr. Blackwood from Blackwood & Partners law firm, please. Yes, urgently. On a personal matter. She spoke calmly and matter-of-factly, as if ordering a table at a restaurant or discussing grocery delivery. Hanging up, she looked at me again, and in her gaze I saw not just gratitude, but something more, respect. You probably don't know this, Kyle, but Smart Life Solutions doesn't belong to Roger. It belongs to me. 100%. My father, Harold Stone, founded it 40 years ago and left it to me in his will. Roger is just a hired manager whom I, foolishly and out of love, put in charge because he was my husband and seemed reliable. As of today, he no longer works there. That's final and irrevocable. My lawyers will have all the documents ready by evening. Security will change the locks on his office before he gets back from his meeting. I couldn't believe my ears. Roger was just a puppet? A figurehead? And the real queen, the real owner of this entire kingdom, had always been her, this modest woman in a simple t-shirt, with tired eyes and a spine of steel? As for you, Andrea looked me straight in the eye. You're going to be the new company director. From the shock, my jaw must have dropped, and I probably went pale. The floor seemed to give way beneath me, and I had to grab the arm of the couch. What? Andrea, that's impossible. I blurted out. I can't handle it. I've never managed an entire company in my life. I'm just an engineer, a project manager at best. I'm not ready for that level of responsibility. Nonsense, Andrea cut me off in a tone that brooked no argument. You know this company better than any other manager, including Roger. You know every cog, every process, every employee. You know how our systems work because you installed them yourself. You know the clients because you've personally dealt with half of them. As for management, that can be learned. I'll help you. At first, I'll be there, guide you, advise you. I need an honest person in that position. Someone who won't sell the company for a pretty skirt or promises from competitors. Someone who won't sleep with the secretaries and waste the budget on mistresses. You can do it, Kyle. I believe in you. I looked at her and saw in her eyes not just business acumen, but an iron will and kindness. Genuine, sincere kindness hiding behind the armor of cold calculation. She wasn't taking revenge on Roger by appointing me. She was simply restoring order in her house and her business. And she trusted me. I'll do everything I can, Andrea. Everything in my power not to let you down, I breathed, feeling a lump forming in my throat. Kyle. Not me, but us. You're part of the team now. Part of my team, she smiled, and there was more warmth in that smile than I'd seen even on the evening of the birthday party. Go home, to Emily and your little one. You performed an act of heroism today. Rest, drink some wine, hug your wife. Tomorrow a completely new life begins. For all of us. I walked out of her house in a daze. The autumn rain had stopped, and pale sun was breaking through the clouds. My head was in a complete whirl, a jumble of emotions, thoughts, and plans. I had expected anything, a scene, a fight, getting fired, tears. Instead, I got a promotion to director and a new friend. That evening, Roger called me. He was drunk, even though it was only around 7 in the evening. He screamed into the phone so loud the speaker crackled. He called me a sneaky snake, a traitor, a rat who had wormed his way into his wife's trust and ruined his life. He screamed that I had planned it all to take his place. I listened for about 5 minutes, silently, without interrupting. Then, calmly, even with a sense of relief, I said, Roger, you ruined your own life. With your own hands, your own actions. The moment you decided you were above the rules, that you could get away with harassing your employee's wife. You crossed the line. Don't ever call me again. And I hung up. Life did indeed become completely new. I took over as director. At first, it was terrifying, mountains of reports, endless meetings, strategy sessions, personnel issues. But Andrea kept her word. She was there. We met almost daily, discussing plans, problems, prospects. She turned out to be a brilliant mentor, wise, patient, but demanding. She had an incredible business instinct and phenomenal calm under pressure. We worked together for almost a year, and during that time, the company grew by 30%. We entered new markets, launched 2 innovative products, and our stock soared. But the main thing wasn't even the financial success. Andrea gradually became part of our family. Not intrusively, not like a rich boss lady, condescending to mere mortals, but like family. First, she simply invited us to dinner, to chat, like old friends. Then we invited her to our place. Our modest apartment, of course, couldn't compare to her mansion, but she seemed comfortable there, praising Emily for her flowers on the windowsills and her homemade baking. Once, she came over and brought Leo a huge teddy bear, as big as the child himself. Leo was initially scared of such a monster, hiding behind Emily's leg and peeking out with one eye. But Andrea didn't push. She just sat on the floor, took the bear, and started talking to it in a funny voice, pretending the bear wanted to be friends. Leo, who was usually shy around strangers and wouldn't go to almost anyone except us, first just watched, then, about 10 minutes later, was sitting on Andrea's lap trying to feed the bear cookies. From then on, Auntie Andrea, as Leo started calling her, we didn't teach him, he just came out with it one day, became our lifeline and simply our closest friend. She often called Emily for advice on flowers for her new garden. She had bought herself a small but cozy house in the countryside with a plot of land and immersed herself in landscape design. They could chat on the phone for an hour, discussing rose varieties, fertilizers, and planting schemes. Emily blossomed. She had a friend, older, wiser, someone she could talk to about more than just diapers and baby food. Then came the moment that cemented our relationship. Our babysitter, a college student who helped us a couple of times a week, canceled right before a crucial meeting with investors that I couldn't postpone. Emily also had to be at work. The shop was expecting a huge shipment of orchids before the holidays. We were in a panic. I was about to call the investors and reschedule, which would have been a disaster for the company's image. Then Andrea called. Kyle, how are you? I'm driving past your neighborhood and thought I'd pop in for a coffee. Andrea, I breathed into the phone, we're having an apocalypse here. The babysitter is sick, we have an investor meeting in 2 hours, Emily needs to get to work, and we have no one to leave Leo with. Then bring him to me, she said calmly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. What? I was dumbfounded. Are you crazy? He's a baby. He's 1 year old. He's noisy, high maintenance, needs constant supervision. He puts everything in his mouth, falls over, cries. We can't burden you like that. Kyle, her voice had a metallic edge, but also laughter. I raised 2 perfectly normal sons. Alone, without nannies. They were 1-year-olds once too and put everything in their mouths. I can handle it. Besides, it would make me happy. I'm practically a grandmother, and my grandsons are far away in Europe. I see them once a year. Stop arguing. Get Leo ready and bring him over. We brought Leo. I carried him, and he looked around, examining the unfamiliar house. Andrea met us at the door of her country house. She was wearing a funny apron with little chicks on it, and she was smiling in a way I'd never seen before, a genuinely happy, grandmotherly smile. "Well, hello there, little man," she said, taking Leo from my arms. Leo looked at her seriously, appraising Ly, then suddenly poked her nose with his little finger and laughed. That was it. The connection was made. We left for the meeting with heavy hearts, but we had no choice. The meeting went brilliantly, the investors signed the contract. But all I could think about was, how's our Leo? Is he fussing? Has he given Andrea a heart attack? When we returned that evening, around 8 o'clock, we walked into the living room and stopped in the doorway. Leo was sitting on the floor on a soft rug, intently building a tower with huge colorful blocks that Andrea had apparently bought specially for his visit. And Andrea was lying beside him on her stomach, propping her head on her hand, suggesting which block to put next so the tower wouldn't fall. She still wore that funny apron, her hair was tousled, and a bead of sweat glistened on her nose. Her eyes were moist, whether from tiredness or happiness. "Mommy, Daddy," Leo yelled when he saw us, and immediately ran towards us on his unsteady legs, almost falling. Andrea sat up and smiled at us. "How was he?" Emily asked, scooping up her son. "Wasn't he too much trouble?" "This was the best day I've had in years," Andrea replied simply, and I saw a tear roll down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away. "Thank you for trusting me with him." Emily and I looked at each other. In that moment, we understood that we had gained not just a boss or a friend. We had gained a family member. Another 2 years have passed since then. Leo is big now, almost 3. He runs, speaks in sentences, loves cars, and, of course, his Auntie Andrea. She's one of the closest people to him after us. Andrea still visits often. She brings toys, books, clothes, always the best, but never flashy. She sits with Leo when Emily and I want to go to the movies or have dinner alone. She takes him to the zoo and the amusement park. She became the grandmother Leo never had. My mom lives in another state, and Emily's parents passed away young. We often have dinner together, the 3 of us, at her country house or at our place. Andrea taught Emily to bake apple pie using her family recipe. And I help her with her smart garden. We automated the watering and lighting in the greenhouse where she grows her beloved roses. I never saw Roger again. I heard he left town, Florida maybe, and lives alone. I don't feel sorry for him. He got what he deserved. I'm still the director of Smart Life Solutions. And every day, walking into my office, that same corner office with panoramic windows that Roger used to occupy, I thank fate for the day I decided to overcome my fears and tell the truth. One evening, after Leo was asleep, Emily and I sat in the kitchen drinking tea. Rain was falling outside. Inside, it was warm and cozy. "You know," Emily said quietly, watching the raindrops on the window. "That whole story could have ended terribly. You could have just yelled at Roger and quit. We would have lost everything, your job, our income, our stability. And we'd be left with nothing but anger and a sense of injustice." "I almost did that," I admitted, putting my arm around her shoulders. "I didn't sleep all night, running revenge scenarios through my head. But you went to Andrea instead. You acted wisely and honestly. You didn't stay silent, and you didn't try to be a hero alone. And now we have not only a career but a true friend. She's become family. She's like a mother-in-law, a best friend, all rolled into one." I kissed the top of Emily's head and looked out the window. The rain was stopping and moonlight was breaking through the clouds, illuminating the wet rooftops. "You know what the funniest thing about this whole story is?" I asked. "What?" "That it all started with flowers. With Roger inventing the story about flowers for his wife to get close to you. And it ended with those same flowers making Andrea part of our family. And now we're all together. Fate is an ironic thing. Fate tested us with a vile, hypocritical boss, but in return gave us something far more valuable. We found family where we least expected it. And every time I pass the flower shop, Botanica, where it all began, I thank that chance that made me go meet my wife from work on that ordinary Tuesday. Sometimes, to gain something truly precious, you first have to lose your illusions. And I'm endlessly grateful that Emily and I lost every single one of them, but found each other and a true friend for life. And the roses Andrea grows in her greenhouse now smell like no other flowers in the world. Because they smell of gratitude and genuine, unbreakable friendship.